Black History Month on the Victory Channel.
Good evening. Welcome to Victory News. It's Tuesday, February the 4th, 2025. I'm Greg Stevens along with Mike Garofalo, Fiora Hernandez, and Tim Fox. These are the stories that we're watching for you tonight. New York Attorney General Letitia James tells hospitals to defy President Trump's ban on sex change procedures on young children. And the World Health Organization director is lobbying global leaders to stop the United States from withdrawing from the controversial group. Ahead, we'll talk with former Congressman, Victory News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. He will join us to discuss these stories and much more. But first, let's go to Fiora Hernandez with our headlines. Fiora.
Thank you, Greg. President Donald Trump and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced Monday the 25% tariffs would be postponed for 1 month in exchange for concessions of border security from Mexico. Sheinbaum reportedly agreed to reinforce the border with 10,000 Mexican National Guard troops to crack down on fentanyl and illegal immigrants entering the U.S. From Mexico's standpoint, Sheinbaum asked President Trump to help stop the arms trafficking from the United States into her country. She alleges he agreed. Canada also got a last-minute reprieve from tariffs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday afternoon announced an agreement with the United States to postpone a 25% tariffs on Canadian goods for 30 days in exchange for enhanced border security measures. Trudeau posted that agreement included Canada implementing a $1.3 billion border plan with increased personnel and technology. As for the tariffs on China, beginning today, the 10% tariffs are in effect on Chinese goods entering the United States. The measures are part of President Trump's tools to motivate China to stop the flow of precursors chemicals to Mexican cartels, who then turn them into fentanyl pills, which are smuggled into the United States. Last week, the president declared the fentanyl crisis a national emergency. In the meantime, according to the New York Post, China is retaliating by imposing a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas imported from the U.S. and a 10% tax on crude oil and agricultural machinery. A phone call is expected between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping tomorrow. The Senate Judiciary Committee held a meeting about fentanyl today called The Poisoning of America. It had to do with reclassifying fentanyl as a Schedule I drug. A current classification for the opioid is Schedule II, used for pain management. If classified as a Schedule I drug, it would be deemed having no medical use and a high chance of abuse. Parents who've lost children to fentanyl, law enforcement officers, and a medical expert testified today. Jamie Puerta's 15-year-old son died in 2020 after taking a fentanyl pill that looked like oxycodone.
His mother, Denise, got into his hospital bed and laid next to him, gently stroking his beautiful head of dark brown hair, and I was holding his right hand when he drew his last breath.
Newly appointed Republican Senator from Florida, Ashley Moody, asked all in the audience directly impacted by loss due to fentanyl to stand up. She then shared this.
Teens can now get drugs so easily. The cartels think of these social media platforms as their Uber Eats for quick delivery right into the hands of our children.
A bill with bipartisan support for the reclassification was introduced in January, Mike.
The Senate Finance Committee voted 14-13 this morning in favor of Donald Trump's Health and Human Services nominee, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The final Republican swing vote, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, made a decision to support Kennedy after speaking with the nominee over the weekend. A full Senate vote is not expected until possibly next week. And this afternoon, President Trump's Director of National Intelligence nominee, Tulsi Gabbard, passed out of the Senate Intelligence Committee by a vote of 9-8 along party lines. The next stop is the full Senate. In the last 24 hours, moderate Republican Susan Collins of Maine and the last holdout Todd Young of Indiana agreed to support Gabbard. And also today, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs nominee, Doug Collins, was approved by the full Senate 77-23. In other Trump administration cabinet news, on Monday evening, Donald Trump's Energy Secretary nominee Chris Wright was confirmed with a 59-38 vote. The Denver-based fracking CEO was voted in with bipartisan support. Senate also voted along party lines 52-46 to advance the nomination of Pam Bondi for Attorney General to a final vote that could come as early as sometime today. Greg.
After losing its biggest financial supporter, the United States, the World Health Organization is calling on leaders around the globe to put pressure on Donald Trump to reconsider his decision to withdraw the United States. According to the Associated Press, for 2024 to 2025, the U.S. contributed an estimated $988 million. This is roughly 14% of the agency's $6.9 million budget, revealing a strong reliance on American dollars. Just days after the signing, the executive order, while in Las Vegas on January 25th, Donald Trump did float the idea of the United States returning to the WHO if changes were made. Joining us now is the host of the Steadfast and Loyal podcast, former Congressman, Victory News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Sir, welcome to Victory News today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Greg.
So Donald Trump's executive order says the U.S. is out of the World Health Organization, and today Kenya exited WHO as well, saying its leaders cannot be trusted. Is the biggest loser in all this Bill Gates, since he's responsible for 88% of the total funding for the World Health Organization?
Yeah, I would say so, without a doubt. The whole issue is falling under a globalist agenda and losing your sovereignty when it comes to health policy here in the United States of America. We don't want to see that happen. And we know that the WHO really has been a puppet of our number one geopolitical foe, and that is China, and the things that they have done. WHO did not come out and strongly condemn China with the COVID issue and the virus that came out of there, parroting the line about, this animal that gave instead of it being developed there in the Wuhan laboratories. So I think that it is about time that we step away and start again with the America First agenda and get away from these globalists that try to undermine our sovereignty.
Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio struck a historic deal with the president of El Salvador, describing it as, quote, I'll quote him, the most unprecedented, extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world. In the remarks from the capital of San Salvador, here he is.
He has agreed to accept for deportation any illegal alien in the United States who is a criminal from any nationality, be they MS-13 or Tren de Aragua, and house them in his jails.
The agreement even includes an invitation to hold dangerous American criminals. Colonel, your reaction to this agreement?
Well, again, this is how you get peace through strength. When you have leadership and you have a leader such as President Trump that's operating from the moral high ground and someone that can go down there. Marco Rubio was a great selection for Secretary of State because Donald Trump understands we have to have better, stronger relationships right here in our hemisphere. And that means Central America and also South America. And look at what he's done already, getting the president of Panama to walk back on the One Belt, One Road policy initiative with China. And now look at what has happened with El Salvador. And we know with the capitulation of the president of Colombia as well. So I think that we are starting to move toward Pax Americana here in the Western Hemisphere.
Now, the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, well, he decided to flaunt his relationship with an illegal immigrant. Listen to him and then listen to Border Czar Tom Homan's response to that. Here it is.
But there's someone in our broader universe whose immigration status is not yet at the point that they are trying to get it to. And we said, you know what, let's have her live at our house above our garage. And good luck to the feds coming in to try to get her.
I got note of it. Won't let it go. We'll look into it. And if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien, that's a violation of Title 8 United States Code 1324. I would seek prosecution, or the Secretary would seek prosecution.
Oh, boy, here we go. Representative for Governor Murphy is in full backpedal mode, now stating, quote, no one's ever lived in the home under the circumstances the governor described. Colonel, why would a governor brag about breaking federal law, then they deny those actions?
Well, what you're finding is that you have these governors, Democrat governors, who are trying to get out there and show their moxie so that they can run for president here in 2028. And so Phil Murphy got way over his skis, and then all of a sudden he realized, oops, I've got Tom Homan. Tom Homan is very serious. Tom Homan knows the law, and I'm supposed to be subservient to federal law as long as it is in pursuance thereof of the Constitution. That's in the Supremacy Clause. And I think the other governor that needs to take a little bit of humble pie is Governor Pritzker up there in Illinois.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch all of this. There's a lot of angst on the left right now with everything that's happening. It's happening so fast. Colonel, thank you so much. We'll bring you back here in just a moment.
Thank you.
Mike?
Greg, a new poll shows overwhelming majority of Americans favor voter ID and say the policy is not discriminatory. The Rasmussen poll found that 77% of Americans say requiring photo ID to vote is reasonable to protect election integrity, which is up from 74% in 2023. 60% of respondents say they do not believe the practice of requiring ID is discriminatory. When broken down by race, 88% of blacks and 77% of Hispanics say they support voter ID. The poll sampled 1,229 likely voters on January 26th to the 28th with a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points. More than 1,000 Environmental Protection Agency staffers have been notified they could be fired at any moment. New York Times reports an email was sent to some 1,100 employees hired within the past year who are on probationary status. The Daily Wire reports ending remote work at the EPA could also shrink the agency if employees opt to leave their jobs instead of returning to full-time office work. New EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin also announced a new initiative entitled Powering the Great American Comeback. In an interview with Breitbart News, he offered 5 major pillars. They are, first, clean air, land, and water for every American. Second, restoring American energy dominance. Third, permitting reform, cooperative federalism, and cross-agency partnership. Fourth, making the U.S. the artificial intelligence capital of the world. And finally, protecting and bringing back American auto jobs. Secretary Zeldin promised he would be front and center, pushing forward the initiatives and its principles. The U.S. Navy has released an image published in the U.S. Center for Countermeasures annual report this month showing a successful test of a new warfighting laser from the USS Preble destroyer. Where and when that test took place was not revealed. Check out that picture. Helios, or high laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance, uses a 60 kilowatt high energy laser that engages targets at the speed of light, obliterating them. When targeting drones and fast attacking crafts as well as missiles, the laser causes them to overheat and then melt. Additionally, it doubles as an optical dazzler, which disrupts intelligence and reconnaissance sensors. The Daily Mail report says the laser can hit targets up to 5 miles away. The high-energy laser was developed by Lockheed Martin in 2021 and delivered to the U.S. military in 2022. Fior.
Mike, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth traveled to the U.S.-Mexico border on Monday, his first trip since his confirmation.
We believe, and he believes, that border security is national security. Guys and gals of my generation have spent decades in foreign countries guarding other people's borders. It's about time we secure our own border.
Hegseth was joined by border czar Tom Homan, and according to the Washington Times on Saturday, Homan said he wanted less rigorous standards for jailing illegal immigrants, noting that if the county jail was, quote, good enough for a U.S. citizen, then it was good enough for an illegal immigrant. Homan made the comments during the National Association of Sheriffs annual meeting. Republican attorneys general push back against Democrats who are attempting to challenge Donald Trump's executive order involving birthright citizenship. On Monday, Iowa Attorney General Brenna Bird, with 17 other Republican AGs supporting her, filed a suit backing Trump's order, calling for the federal government to stop issuing passports, citizenship certificates, and other documents to children born in the U.S. whose parents are in the country illegally. Here's Donald Trump signing that order about 2 weeks ago.
We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But
shortly after it was signed, the order was challenged by 22 Democrat attorneys general and was paused by a federal judge in Seattle. The case over the interpretation of the 14th Amendment will most likely end up at the U.S. Supreme Court, although House Republicans have crafted a bill to end birthright citizenship as it currently stands. Greg?
Mexican drug cartels are now allegedly ordering members to attack U.S. Border Patrol agents with kamikaze drones and other explosives. According to the New York Post, the strategy was outlined in an internal officer safety alert memo, which said, quote, on February 1, 2025, the El Paso Sector Intelligence and Operations Center received information advising that Mexican cartel leaders have authorized the deployment of drones equipped with explosives to be used against U.S. Border Patrol agents and U.S. military personnel currently working along the border with Mexico. The memo also said first aid kits, tourniquets, and body armor, as well as rifles, should be kept readily available when out on patrol. Department of Homeland Security will not be renewing the temporary protected status of more than 350,000 Venezuelans who were given that privilege by the Biden administration in 2023. According to a notice set to be published in the Federal Registry on Wednesday, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will be revoking one of the two temporary protected statuses given to hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans. The protected status will remain in place until April. The 18-month TPS extension issued by the Biden administration not long before leaving office was revoked last week by Noem. The Biden administration extension had initially provided protections until October of 2026. Tim?
Greg, President Trump signed an executive order on Monday to create a sovereign wealth fund, the first of its kind in the United States. The fund would receive capital through tariffs as well as other streams and use those funds to invest into ventures that could generate high returns. The president has suggested one such possible venture would be to purchase TikTok, as its parent company ByteDance faces a looming deadline to divest or face a U.S. ban. The president pointed out that other smaller countries have these funds, but predicted that the United States would have one of the biggest in a short period of time. House and Senate GOP members held a press conference today addressing cryptocurrency regulations. David Sachs, the White House crypto and artificial intelligence policy czar, was joined by South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, Arkansas Senator John Boozman, Pennsylvania Representative G.T. Thompson, and Arkansas Representative French Hill. Now, Sachs highlighted President Trump's Week 1 executive order calling for federal regulatory governance over the issuance and operation of digital assets and stable coins. Sachs added U.S. dominance in digital assets and keeping the innovation on shore was imperative.
We're coming off, frankly, 4 years of arbitrary prosecution and persecution of crypto companies where the SEC wouldn't tell founders what the rules were, but then they would prosecute them. And many founders have even told me stories of being debanked personally.
Sachs also said that the approach is driving crypto companies offshore, but with him at the helm, the goal will be to keep crypto value creation right here in the United States. Mike?
Tim, in direct response to Donald Trump's executive order protecting minors from mutilating sex change procedures, a protest took place in New York City on Monday. It came on the heels of a letter from New York Attorney General Letitia James to local hospitals, warning them they will be in violation of state discrimination laws if they comply with the president's order. James' letter went public after the White House released a list of hospitals already moving to comply. That list included NYU's Langone Health Center. Once again, let's talk with Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Sir, do you think New York Attorney General Letitia James is fighting to continue horrific gender transition surgeries for kids, or doing it to stick a finger in the eye of Donald Trump? Sir?
I put myself on mute. I'm sorry. I think it's a little bit of both. For whatever reason, the progressive socialist left continues to believe that children who cannot even go out and get a tattoo under the age of 18 should have their healthy body parts removed. And we know some of the horrific damages. So they don't believe in protecting our children whatsoever. And I think that also is part of this personal agenda of Letitia James to go after Donald Trump. The Democrat Party needs to understand this is not a winning issue for them. And once again, this is just going to highlight some of the problems that you have as we get ready. Before we know it, we'll be in the 2026 midterm election cycle.
I suspect you're right. Now, the Washington Examiner is reporting today that pro-life groups are now cautiously optimistic about RFK Jr.'s stance on abortion after he supported the Trump administration's anti-abortion policy. Should those of us who are pro-life be supporting him as the next Secretary of Health and Human Services?
Well, I think that, again, we need to look at, what is his position on, make America healthy again. Let's not forget Donald Trump, once upon a time ago, was very much so a pro-choice person, but yet he is the first and only president, if I'm correct, to have ever spoken at a March for Life rally up in Washington, D.C. So he could have a change of heart, and I'm sure RFK Jr. could have a change of heart. And I think it's very important that leaders talk to RFK Jr. about this, because we have to make sure that, again, we protect children inside the womb and outside the womb.
You are exactly right. Now, Democrat Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut made a big claim this morning on CNN. Listen to this.
First of all, every American needs to know that your information, your personal tax records have been potentially compromised, that unelected billionaires and his Silicon Valley right-wing friends may have access to all of your personal information. And all of this seems to be in service of taking control of the federal government.
Colonel, Senator Murphy said this is not being done to get rid of government excess spending and shrink the national debt, but instead to give money to those who pledge loyalty to Donald Trump. Why is the senator mudslinging, do you think, on the efforts of Doge?
Because the left in the United States of America, they have constructed government with a little g as their God, with a little g. And they're very concerned about the deconstruction of the temple of government. And so when you have someone like Elon Musk coming in and making some very common sense, adjudications and getting the approval of the President of the United States of America, you did not hear the left, caring about the IRS and other agencies being able to go in and look at your financial backing. And we know that there were certain banks that went in and canceled people's accounts based upon the preferences of the administration and their ideological agenda. So again, this is much to do about nothing. This is just part of the apoplectic meltdown of the left.
Representative Jasmine Crockett, sir, says she's tired of white tears from mediocre white men. Then she explained her own success in Congress.
You know why I don't feel a way and why you can't make me doubt who I am? Is because I know that I had to work 10 times as hard as they did just to get into the seat. When you look and you compare me to Marjorie Taylor Greene or me to Lauren Boebert, there is no comparison.
Colonel, you and Representative Crockett, she's of course a Democrat, are both from Texas. Do you agree with her comments?
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I'm the Dallas County Republican Party chairman, and her district is here in Dallas County. She didn't have to work hard for that seat. Eddie Bernice Johnson handpicked her, and it was given over to her like a legacy seat. You see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others have to go out there and campaign. She did not have to campaign. And I got to tell you, she is about as, stuck on stupid as they come when you look at some of the comments that she's made. The people in her district should be ashamed that she's their representative.
Sir, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana has a message for all the liberal crying taking place on Capitol Hill over the USAID being stopped from wasting millions and millions of taxpayer dollars. You got to listen to this.
To my friends who are upset, I would say with respect, call somebody who cares. They better get used to this. It's USAID today. It's going to be Department of Education tomorrow.
And President Trump is preparing to address our failed Department of Education. Colonel, should we have such academic failure happening while the teachers' unions are making, as you know, billions of dollars?
No, Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education at the prodding of the teachers' unions back in during his presidential administration. In Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, there are 18 enumerated powers, duties, responsibilities of the federal government. We're going to get this constitutional governance restored under this Trump administration.
All right, Colonel, thank you for that. We're going to see you back here in a couple minutes.
Yes, sir.
Mike, the meeting between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now underway at the White House. Netanyahu, who arrived within the last hour, is the first foreign leader to visit Trump at the White House in his second term. The two leaders are reportedly expected to discuss concerns about Iran's nuclear program, but at the top of the agenda will be hammering out the second phase of the hostage deal. The two are scheduled to hold a joint news conference at the White House as soon as the meeting is concluded. Victory News will have more on this meeting tomorrow. But now with details of what many are expecting from the Prime Minister's visit to the U.S., here's ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
Today, President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu will sit down for a meeting to discuss and coordinate the next major steps in the Middle East. Netanyahu told Israeli reporters accompanying his visit that he would discuss Israel's war against Hamas, the release of all the hostages, and the Iranian terror axis. Netanyahu said the meeting would also focus on normalization with Saudi Arabia, the broadening of the circle of peace, and means to achieve an era of peace through strength. Of immediate importance, Trump and Netanyahu will discuss an extension of the current 42-day first phase of the Gaza hostage ceasefire deal and coordinate a potential second phase. The two leaders are expected to examine the implications of a potential normalization deal with Saudi Arabia and managing Riyadh's demand that Israel present a pathway to a Palestinian state, a notion strongly opposed by Jerusalem at this time. Just 4 days after being freed from Hamas captivity, former soldier hostage Agam Berger attended the IDF course graduation ceremony for her younger sister Bar, who became a non-commissioned officer. Steve Leibowitz for ILTV and Victory News.
Join us in prayer that the discussions between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu align biblically in Jesus' name.
Donald Trump withdrew from it during his first administration, and today he is expected to sign an executive order to withdraw the United States from the United Nations Human Rights Council once again. Politico reports the executive order will also prohibit future funding for the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. The U.S. has for a long time accused the Council of bias against Israel, and some UNRWA employees were also found to have participated in the horrific Hamas attacks on Israelis on October the 7th of 2023. Before we go, let's talk with Victory News contributor Lieutenant Col.Allen West one last time. Colonel, Trump will sign an executive order to withdraw the U.S. from the United Nations Human Rights Council. One of the reasons is the incredible bias against Israel. Colonel, is the president wise to leave UN Human Rights Council and stand with Israel at this time?
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the United Nations votes against two countries primarily 98 to 99% of the time. That's Israel and the United States of America. When you look at some of the countries that are listed on the Human Rights Council, I mean, they're violators of human rights. And this whole thing about a two-state solution, back some time ago, it was supposed to be Jordan and Israel. The Arabs that from this area, they claimed that they did not want to be part of that, and they have rejected all of these peace plans and processes. So I think it's time that we tell them that you're not going to be able to be governed by a terrorist organization like Hamas.
All right, quickly before we go, you released a new Steadfast and Loyal podcast this week. What are you digging into, Colonel?
Well, the futility of these people here in Dallas and across Texas and across the country that are out there marching in support of criminal illegal immigrants and their deportations. I don't know what these people want, but the sovereignty of the United States of America will be protected.
Colonel, let me ask you a question, because I've watched those here and in Los Angeles. Does it help the cause to carry a Mexican flag?
No, it does not help whatsoever. That's a very bad optic.
All right, Colonel, be sure to listen to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. Keep up with Colonel West online at Allen West. Great to see you today, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Always a pleasure. God bless.
God bless you as well. Thank you. 877-281-6297. That's 877-281-6297. A licensed, trained, ready for you, ready to talk with you, ready to pray with you. Prayer minister is sitting there right now waiting for you to make the call. 877-281-6297. I encourage you to call. Let them pray with you concerning whatever's going on in your life. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the information that we've heard, that we now are armed and ready to do something with it, to inform others, to know how to pray, and we give you thanks for that. And we give you glory for that. In your name we pray. Amen. Our thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Allen West and you. Thanks for joining us. We're back tomorrow, noon Eastern, 11 Central, with the Daily Signal senior news producer Virginia Allen and conservative talk show host Jeff Crouere. Also, you make sure you're with us as well. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.